We want to mourn the passing of Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO. At one or two points along the way, Trumka retweeted things from the Tax Wall Street Party and the United Front Against Austerity, so we were grateful for that.
Well, let's take a look at Richard Trumka. He came from a working class background, that's already for sure. He had been the head of the United Mine Workers Union, and that means the center of gravity was these coal fields in the Appalachians. And this, of course, was an industry that was sorely beset by changes in the world coal market, but also the lack of creative thinking on how coal could be used for other purposes, things like petrochemicals and so forth that would not pollute in the way that coal would. So we got to just take a look at the evolution of the AFL-CIO. Remember, American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations. The CIO was the radical part. They were the mass strikes of the 1930s. It was the United Auto Workers, the big industrial unions, whereas the AFL were more traditionally craft unions and things like that. And they had come from a bad tradition, the Gompers tradition, which was be apolitical, don't get involved in politics. So the recent heads of this organization, we had a guy called Lane Kirkland. He was a reactionary. He was Cold War oriented. He was wrong on just about every issue. Less said about him, the better. Before Lane Kirkland, who did you have? You had George Meany, who was, if anything, worse than Lane Kirkland up and down the line. Well, that was that. Then in the mid-90s, we had what was at least the beginning of a turn, and that was John Sweeney, who came in and immediately presided over a strike against UPS. And this was the so-called Union Summer. So this was a moment of breaking the inertia of the old Lane Kirkland. When Sweeney left, he was succeeded by Trumka. This was 2009. The big problem, of course, is that the percentage of American workers who enjoy the benefits of a union has gone down, down, down. And it has to do with the absolutely reactionary right-to-work features of the Taft-Hartley slave labor law, because that's what it was, what it is. And it meant that the number of people who could get a union were reduced. The guy that Trumka looked back to was John L. Lewis, who was a powerful, rambunctious union leader. He was also from the United Mine Workers. And by the mid-1950s, about 1/3 of the U.S. workforce were in a union. Now, if we had that today, we would be sitting pretty. And a couple of turning points along the way. You remember that Reagan broke the air traffic controllers strike in 1981 using scabs and all kinds of things. So the idea was, starting with the failure of Carter, because Carter really had no use for unions, and you had to, but he didn't. He considered unions to be just another special interest, and they're not. They're something very special. They are an institution that helps to maintain the state. In Germany, they are so recognized. They're called staatstragende Institutionen. They are institutions that help to shore up and bear the government and the national state. And we really ought to look at them there. So Trumka came in. He had to fight against this Taft-Hartley stuff and all the union busting and all the Republican ideology and so forth. And he succeeded to some degree. And unfortunately, he has now left us. I would say, based on this brief review, you can see that of the leaders of the AFL-CIO since the Second World War, Trumka has been one of the very best. And that doesn't translate automatically into success or organizing or even winning huge strikes, partly because the Carter spirit has been powerful in the Democratic Party, and there's a lack of understanding why you need organized labor. Trumka's idea had been to transcend narrow bread and butter union issues and connect to broader progressive movements, right? More organizing and greater membership, but to do that with a broader social awareness. So we bid a fond farewell to Richard Trumka.